Third POV. Silence. That was all that could be heard outside the home as the two aura users stared at each other. Izuku Midoriya stared, gobsmacked, at the man dramatically standing on top of the staff. The man's words rang in his ears again, like an echo. Name's Riley. Riley Aaron, the man said. Pro-hero, guardian, elite knight, master, and the strongest aura guardian in the world. Feel free to bow. The words sounded more than a brag. They felt like a proclamation, stating a fact proudly rather than the boastfulness he was used to from Bakugo. The man's stance and confident grin helped with that, giving off an energy to him that said he knew what he was, what power he held, and wasn't shy or humble enough not to diminish it, but not too overt or arrogant sounding, at least enough not to sound obnoxious. But it was his aura, for lack of a better term, that the green-haired hero student latched onto. Izuku could feel it coursing through this man. Silent, yet present, an aura that all but declared that he stood at the pinnacle, that his word was divine fact. All Izuku could do was gawk, slack-jawed. However, the silence was starting to get particularly grating and uncomfortable, especially for the man himself. Riley fought the urge to sweat drop or comically fall off his staff as a particularly harsh breeze of wind blew by. It felt like the world itself was telling them to move on, yet the boy stood as rigid as a statue, staring at him with those eyes that seemed to piece him together atom by atom. It would have been flattering to Riley at any other time, but now.
Geez.
Did I come off too strong there? Riley thought, awkwardly embarrassed. I was trying to come off as cool, not cringe. Maybe I should switch tactics, go for the wise, stern type like Taisher Dash. So cool. Izuku's sudden yell nearly threw Riley off the staff harder than the wind from before. Suddenly, the green-haired teenager sped straight up to right under him, gazing up at him with stars in his eyes, occasionally encircling him like he was a rare fossil or artifact to examine.
It's really you.
Mystery hero. Guardian. Ranked 20 on the Hero Billboard charts. Ranked 4th on the handsomest male pro list. 2nd on the mysterious, yet cool list. I can't believe I'm actually going to be interning under you. You're reported as one of the few heroes who don't do Team UPS, sidekicks, or interns like Miruko, except for last year. Was that Nijire-senpai? Was it because she was also a chosen? And you're an aura guardian, too. A pro-hero who's also an aura guardian. This is amazing. You could help me out so much with what's going on with my quirk and aura. I can thank you enough for this amazing opportunity. That was as far as Riley could understand before it became an unending flood of muttering, praises, and questions that gave the man serious déjà vu. It's like someone cloned Nijire and gender swapped her into a boy. Riley finally sweat dropped. Or, at least after I helped break her out of her shell. Riley could still remember how Nijire was when he first met her, cold, silent, staring at him with harsh, calculating eyes. It had taken time and patience for him to help turn her into the joyful fairy she was today. Now, Riley Aaron felt as though he had been placed in the exact opposite of that situation. This was the last thing I thought the old man would do, Riley admitted. He could see where Taisher was coming from when he sent Nijire to him to train, someone cold, steady, and rigid to balance out his more boastful, confident, even prideful side, but to send someone like this, a fanboy. A crack of a smile twitched out of his mouth before he broke. Riley threw his head back and laughed like a maniac, hugging his sides that started to hurt. His laughter worked to snap Midoriya from his fanboy muttering, switching from excited to confused.
Oh.
You're a riot. You know that, kid? Riley cackled, wiping a tear as she grinned down at the Izuku. I was expecting an arrogant brat to knock down a peg, maybe someone cold like little Nijire to balance me out, but to think the old man would send someone like you for me to train? If he thought I needed a bard to sing my praises for me, I would have asked so years ago. Old man? Nijire, cold. Izuku repeated those words, confused. Thinking about the first two aura wielders he met, Riley's descriptions of them didn't match what he saw. Sure, Taisher's silver hair would be a definite sign of his age, but his face looked too youthful to be considered old. It made his hair color appear a natural element to the man's mysterious and cryptic look. And Nijire, cold? The The periwinkle beauty he met and endured looked like the farthest thing from cold than he could think of. "Oh, I'll tell you about it later." Riley waved off with a flick of his wrist. The man hopped off his staff with grace, standing before Izuku Midoriya, hands on his hips. "So, you're Izuku Midoriya? Taisher's little pet project? He thinks I could teach you a thing or two about our little world, huh?" "Why, yes, sir." Izuku nodded, correcting his posture to stand straight and ready, like a soldier. "I promise to be as dutiful a student as I can dash." A flick to the forehead cut off Izuku. Wrong," Riley yelled, mimicking the sound of a wrong button. "Huss," Izuku gasped, suddenly worried about being rejected so quickly. "First off, Ixnay of the Sir title," Riley ordered, crossing his arms and rolling his eyes. "I mean, yeah, it's accurate with my title, but you know how exhausting it sounds being called Sir Aaron by all your peers. Like barf." Riley pointed his finger at his open mouth. Oh, Izuku muttered, relief washing over him. "Why, yes, sir, I mean no, sir. I mean no, sir, as in no more sirs. I mean dash." Izuku shook his head, cutting himself off before he could embarrass himself further. "So, what should I refer to you as? Guardian? Aaron Senpai?" "Meh. Riley is fine, but if you insist on something formal sounding, I guess Guardian is fine, too." Riley shrugged before shaking his head. "Whatever. We're getting off track." Riley's relaxed attitude suddenly flipped to one of seriousness. "So, I'm guessing that Taisher told you about who we are? What you really are?" "Hi." Izuku nodded, his face likewise hardening with seriousness. "He told me about what we chosen are, what we do, and why we have to hide the truth of our powers." "Yeah? And what is it that we do, exactly?" Riley asked, raising a curious eyebrow. "We use our powers and connection to aura to help people and Pokemon," Izuku answered. "Oh, and is that what is most important to you? Why you want to learn to master this power?" Riley asked, gazing harder at him. "What?" Izuku blinked, startled by the question and Riley's hard gaze. "I saw you during the sports festival," Riley began, turning away from him and walking forward. "I saw how you fought, so desperate to win, how you were so willing to break your own body to see victory. The pleasure you must have felt to be so strong." "That's not why I fought so hard for," Izuku denied. "And I didn't take any pleasure in winning." "Really? That's not what I saw," Riley scoffed, shaking his head. "I saw that smugness, that vindication in your eyes when you won against your opponents. The Shinso kid, Todoroki, and Bakugo. Especially Bakugo. Don't pretend you didn't feel great about putting the guy down." Izuku's retort died in his throat. Looking back, Izuku couldn't say Aaron was wrong. He remembered the acts that all three boys had committed, either on him or those he cared for. Shinso for brainwashing Serena and Ojiro, and humiliating Aoyama, Todoroki abusing his Vulpix, and manipulating Momo through their quirk marriage contract, and everything Bakugo had done to him, and how he brutally attacked Mina. Izuku's fists clenched as he looked back, and he couldn't deny the satisfaction, the vindication he felt in finally winning against his former bully, to repay the years of humiliation and torment done to him. Aura isn't a toy to be played with, a tool for revenge, or something you can fire off with no consequence like that quirk of yours, Riley continued, his words biting and serious. You experience what happens when you push that power too far, how easily you can leave yourself on death's doorstep. And you think someone with that level of carelessness should be allowed to learn how to harness that energy further? To learn such an important, yet devastating power? You think your hands are the right ones to wield it? Izuku was silent, mouth pressed in a thin line. "Tell me, Izuku Midoriya, what does aura mean to you? What does power, true power, mean to you?" Riley turned and asked him. Izuku's eyes couldn't be seen past the shadow of his hair, Riley's words and glare bearing down on him harshly, questioning him to his very core. "What does power mean to me?" Izuku thought, his gaze looking at his right hand, crooked and covered in scars. The gaze fell further to Pikachu, standing by his side, to the pokeballs on his belt, and what those scars meant to him. "You're right," Izuku stated. Riley's eyebrow perked. You're right about what you said. No matter what I say, I can't deny it. I did feel great winning against them. Beating them, Izuku admitted. I won't deny that being strong feels great. How much I hated feeling weak and helpless in a world full of power. Ever since I got my powers, I've used them recklessly. I did everything I could to win, because to lose meant even with power, I was not enough, still weak, still a useless Deku. I wanted power. Izuku's eyes rose to meet Riley's. But it was never for myself. Then for whom? Riley's gaze narrowed. For them. Izuku gestured to Pikachu. My Pokemon who stood by me when no one else would, who, if they are connected to my aura, then are in as much danger as I am if I don't learn how to master it, to control it, to make sure it doesn't harm them. Izuku, Pikachu muttered, staring at his trainer. The others shifted within their Pokeballs. For my friends, who look up to me, befriended me, Izuku raised his scarred hand to Riley, who I fought and broke myself for. I stood up for them against the people who wronged them because I was the only one who could. Because they mattered to me more than my life ever could. Riley's mouth twitched and shifted. And for my dream, Izuku's scarred fist clenched into a fist. The dream of becoming a hero. To be like All Might. To save everyone I can and tell them everything is going to be okay with a smile on my face. To protect those who can't help themselves. Izuku lowered his fist. Maybe my hands aren't the ones best suited to wield this power. I don't know why I was chosen to wield this power. Izuku pressed his fist to his heart. But I have it, and I have a duty to use this power for them, to give my all for them, and for the people and Pokemon I can help give peace and hope to.
What is power to me?
Izuku glared determinately at Riley, emerald eyes flashing with blue light. It's an obligation, a gift to use in the service of others. A gift to be shared in any way I can. And if you won't teach me, that's fine, but I won't quit. I'm seeing this through to the end, because this power I wield is for them, and I won't stop until I become the strongest I can be to protect them. Silence hung heavily between them, the only noise the wind and the leaves scattering into the distance. Riley's mouth opened slightly, fingers twitching at the touch of past ghosts. Just when Izuku thought to turn away, Riley smiled. That's everything I needed to hear. Riley smirked, staring deeply into Izuku's eyes. All right, kid, consider me your master aura guardian from now on. Izuku did not have time to register the relief in his chest, forcing himself to bow. Hi. Teach me well, Guardian-sensei. Izuku yelled. Pikachu, beside him, bowed as well. Riley grinned. Good, however, you have a lot to learn and little time to master it, Riley started. Even Nijire had some remedial training with the Order before being sent to me, so we're gonna have to put you through one hell of an aura crash course. You ready? Hi. Izuku rose from his bow, eyes blazing with determination. I'm ready. Riley smirked, nodding. Good. Then your first lesson. Riley raised his hands, and Izuku blinked, surprised by the creature suddenly in his grasp and the sudden goofy grin on Riley's face. Is to catch this little guy. The creature in Riley's hands was the size of a small child, covered in blue and black fur, with metallic bumps on the back of its forepaws, a blue tail sprouting from its back, and two black, teardrop-like appendages on the sides of its short, canine-shaped face. The Riola stared at him happily with its eyes. Riola. The Pokemon cried out. Izuku blinked repeatedly, his eyes like comical black dots full of confusion.
Ah.
That was the last noise he made before a black-pawed foot crashed onto his face. Mina collapsed to the ground on her back, her ample chest rising with every exhausted breath, pressing forward on her hero costume. What the hell kind of torture did I subject myself to? Mina questioned, thinking of the series of events that led her to this bruised moment. When she and Yamamoto found the internship offer, both of them could hardly believe their eyes. Momo even created a magnifying glass to gaze down at the name to make sure it wasn't some horrible typo. Needless to say, when the heiress verified that it was genuine, Mina was sold. It didn't matter the looks of worry she received from her friends, like Kirishima, or words of caution, mostly from Yamamoto. Mina knew she had to take this once-in-a-lifetime offer. Arriving in the city of her destination, her offer had a follow-up message: to suit up in her hero suit before arriving at the exact address. Mina thought it was weird at first. Mr. Aizawa said that they couldn't wear their costumes out in public without permission from their assigned pro, but after being given the go-ahead, Mina shrugged and did as told. She did admit that wearing her outfit in public drew more than a few glances her way. She was even held up a bit by passing civilians asking if she was a new pro heroine. A young one at that, but they quickly realized who she was after she pointed out that she was an intern. Mina didn't know whether she felt more touched by their sympathetic stares and words after what Bakugo did to her, or slightly infuriated. I guess I just have to work extra hard to make my name stand out further than the girl Bakugo horribly beat up, Mina had said, the annoyance mostly coming from how people seemed to forget she left her own share of scars on Bakadush, as was one of the many insults. Back on track, Mina had arrived at her destination, a normal office building. Odd, but given the pro-heroine she was interning under, it made sense why she didn't have her own agency building and opted to rent one out instead. The lady at the reception desk welcomed her and gestured her to a training room to the side. Entering the room, and the next 10 seconds of silence were the last moments of peace she had before being put to a beatdown almost as bad as Bakugo's. It wasn't as brutal in the sense that she was left as damaged as in that fight, though Mina knew the sores on her body would definitely bruise. The pro-heroine was obviously faster and stronger than Bakugo, but Mina could tell she was holding back to an immense degree. That didn't stop her from being absolutely obliterated and overwhelmed by the heroine's speed and strength. No matter what Mina did, how much acid she threw to deter her, acid she made to slide on, or dance moves she implemented to evade her, the pink-skinned girl was left utterly helpless against the pro. She didn't even have time to bring out one of her Pokemon to aid her. That all led to this moment, with Mina flat on her back, utterly wrecked, and her interning pro's large foot planted so hard on the ground next to her head, web-like cracks formed from the impact, making Mina shudder in instinctive fear. 5 minutes. Impressive, the pro-heroine said. Faster than I predicted, especially from a noob. Now I see how you gave that explosive asshole such a hard time. Mina squinted her eyes open, the heavy weight of her own eyelids evident in how she just wanted to lie down and do nothing. 5 minutes. That felt like I was fighting for my life for half an hour, Mina thought. But then I shouldn't be surprised, given who she is. Standing victoriously above her, the rabbit hero, Maruko grinned at her, her slightly crouched position over her allowing Mina to gaze at every amazing feature the surprisingly short Amazonian of a woman had to offer. Hell, they stood at the same height, only broken by the woman's rabbit ears jutting out from the sides of her head. Her tan skin gleamed with sweat that Mina doubted came from their one-sided match, but damn did they shine like polished bronze. The pro-heroine's figure had what Mina could only describe as the perfect blend of curvaceous and muscled, the best of both worlds put into one stunning woman, with rabbit features as a bonus. Miruko's arms were muscular yet maintained a lean, feminine shape rather than looking overly bulky. The white leotard hugged her curves, the yellow crescent moon emblem stretched across her impressive chest, and her stunning figure had once earned Mina a kick to the gut for getting caught staring. And her thighs. Goddamn, her thighs. If there was any reassurance that I'm totally bi, she proved it, Mina declared mentally, her eyes unable to glance and analyze, Midori style, every muscled curve of those cannonballs the tanned woman called thighs. The only thing she felt rather off about the woman, other than her apparent lack of knowing how much to hold back, was her eyes. Don't get her wrong. Maruko's blood-red eyes were as stunning as everything else about the woman, but coupled with her well-known battle mania and slight arrogant side, Mina couldn't help but see Katsuki Bakugo in those eyes. A prettier, more adjusted version of Bakugo, perhaps, but Bakugo nonetheless. Got to hand it to ya, sister, you're one agile chick. Maruko chuckled approvingly, rising from her position, before leaning down to stretch her hand out for her to take. Not bad for a warm-up. Despite every bone and muscle in her body screaming at her to not take that hand and fall into the blissful, healing embrace of sleep, Mina reached up and took Maruko's hand, letting the pro lift her off the ground. Mina's legs wobbled under the strain of having to stand after such a match. But Mina froze, Maruko's words finally registering. Warm, that was a warm-up? Mina exclaimed. Her sudden outburst would prove to be a mistake as she clutched at her sore stomach. Sure, it was. How else was I going to measure up your potential and see if I didn't make a mistake sending you that offer? Maruko snorted, arms crossed in front of her chest in a way that made Mina momentarily forget the pain of her stomach. That beatdown you called a warm-up was a test? Mina asked again, this time not as loudly, to not incur further protest from her bruised stomach.
Yep.
If I didn't see what I liked about you when I first made my offer, I would have thrown your fineness back to you, kicked it, really, if the force wouldn't kill you. Maruko cackled at her own boast. Glad to see you didn't disappoint. Actually, now that you mention it, what did you see in me that made you send that offer? Mina asked, curiosity winning over any fear of questioning and potentially agitating the rabbit hero. You're like the poster girl of no team UPS. You've never had a sidekick or intern before, so why now? Why me? Maruko raised an inquisitive eyebrow at Mina, measuring her question. Guess I shouldn't tow around and get straight to the point, Maruko shrugged. To be honest, you weren't my first pick. Oh, Mina muttered, unable to deny the slight wound to her self-esteem at the admission. Don't get it twisted, girl, it wasn't you specifically. Lots of others would join you on that boat, so much that the ship would capsize. Maruko pointed out, brushing her hand dismissively. I did have my eye on someone else, but a friend of mine convinced me another pro could handle the job better than I could. Mina had a feeling she knew precisely which person Maruko was talking about, but said nothing, letting her would-be mentor continue. But then I saw your match against that explosive guy in your class, the one who beat you something fierce by the end of that fight. Bakugo, right? Maruko continued. Mina flinched at the mention of the bully. Yep, I think that's his name. Anyway, that fight of yours, damn. Was it brutal? Even I didn't feel right after what that asshole did to you. Mina's lips curled, gazing down depressingly, wondering if this internship offer was truly what she feared the most. Out of pity. But you know what pissed me off the most? That you were actually good. Mina blinked, looking back up at Maruko with uncertain, disbelieving eyes. When she saw Maruko's red gaze, Mina knew the pro wasn't lying. You gave the jerk one hell of a fight to win for. How you evaded his attacks, turning that fight into a dance he was forced to play along with, the good licks you got in. Too, I saw potential. Real potential, and all anyone ever seemed to care about when they talk about it was the dude going overboard or how pitiful it was that you were his victim. Such cool potential, and all they could do was look at its wielder with pity. Uffed. Made me want to kick in my TV when I heard that. Maruko shook her head. Nope, I couldn't have that and let that potential waste away from some limp-dicked bitch who'd treat you like a fucking ice sculpture. The way you blend your dancing skills, acrobatics, and flexibility, coupled with how you can blend your quirk with it, now that's talent. Maruko pointed at her, and then herself. You're not an ice sculpture from what I can see. Girl, you're a diamond in the making, and I'll be sure as hell going to make that potential shine, even if I gotta rough you up a bit or step outside my comfort zone to do it. Mina stared, utterly stunned by Maruko's words, something in her chest tightening painfully. The slight annoyance she felt from the passers-by on the way here registered again in her mind, returning with the same feelings she'd been experiencing ever since the sports festival. Everyone treated her like she was made of glass, even Kiri, bless his soul, worried that she might crack like a cheap mirror if she so much as stretched the wrong way. Worse, people treated her with pity. Mina hated it. She hated being looked at as pitiful, helpless, weak. The pink-skinned girl hated it when people treated her differently from everyone else, whether it was as a freak for her looks or some wanting to befriend and be nice to her because of her looks, thinking in some roundabout way that if they befriended a heteromorphic-looking person, they would look cool or woke. That wasn't the kind of hero, the sort of symbol she wanted people to look at her as. Mina didn't want to be someone's symbol of discrimination or someone to be seen with pity. She wanted to be dependable, approachable, someone people could look up to, and see someone who would make everything better. Ishido had achieved some measure of this in her old junior high before UA, the same one she and Kirishima attended. There she had many good friends, some of whom she still keeps in touch with, friends who didn't care about how uniquely she looked, guys who fawned over her like the school's most unobtainable gem. The real enjoyment she got was how dependable she was to everyone, how friendly everyone treated her. Mina could step into a bullying situation and, with a few dance moves and encouragement, she could make both bully and bullied join in and get along, get the former to apologize and be friends with the latter. That was why she hated Bakugo so much, because he wasn't like the bullies she could turn so easily. He was the kind who bullied relentlessly and unreasonably, the same ones that mocked and belittled her for her looks, because what he did to her Midori was unforgivable and something she couldn't change, no matter how many good vibes she tried to inject. Mina even remembered that one day she saved 2 of her schoolmates from him. That hulking, terrifying giant of a man. It took everything she had to stand up and steer the terrifying figure away from those 2 girls, and she collapsed to her knees after he was out of sight. But what mattered beyond the fear and trauma that still haunted her to this day was that she stepped up and protected them, remained as dependable and helpful as the hero she always wanted to be. But now, after one bad match in the sports festival, everyone seemed to treat the once dependable Mina Ishido as a pitiful glass figurine. Exotic, unique, but breakable, pitiful. There seemed to be only one person who didn't look at her like that, staring at her with those adorable emerald eyes. He still treated her like Mina Ishido, but now, she found someone else who saw her, too, enough to give her a shot at an internship offer. The Miruko thought she had what it took to be one of the best, and, to quote her new mentor, she's sure as shit not gonna waste it. Well, that, and the commission's been breathing down my neck to get an intern or a sidekick for a while, and I thought, why not? Miruko suddenly backtracked and shrugged nonchalantly. Mina deadpanned, some of the wind on her sail diminishing, but she couldn't begrudge the honesty from Miruko. She rather appreciated it. Better than the sickening pity and sympathy I've been getting. I'll take what I can get, Mina thought, shaking her head. She stood straighter and smiled back, determination blazing in her unique eyes. Hi. I'll do my best. Exactly what I expect from the UA's plus ultra mentality. Miruko grinned widely. Now, ready to get really started? You betcha. Mina pumped her fist into the air. That's the spirit. Pinky. Miruko exclaimed. It's alchemina. Mina corrected her. Whatever. Miruko exclaimed again, unfazed. Now. Miruko pressed her fist over her hand, cracking her knuckles. Let's see if you can do better this next round. Twice as long. Mina's excitement fizzled quickly, her pink skin paling so much that she was almost a regular pale. Oh, yeah, right, still in hell, fuck. I can sense you are still pondering why I sent you my offer, Kriati. Momo set down her cup of tea, slowly and respectfully, slowly analyzing the scene before her. Both Momo and her pro-hero mentor sat on their knees in a dojo-like room, the main office space/training room of the latter's agency, as befitting his status as the shinobi hero. Etshot sat in his traditional ninja-like hero outfit, a red shinobi shizoku clothed over by short dark blue robes that ended normally at his knees and currently pooled on the ground in his sitting position. Both his shoulders were covered in thin, dark cloth. A golden demon-like mask with horns and an evil grin covered his right shoulder. Red straps wrapped above his biceps, with more tying his robes and belt. White sleeves covered his wrists and forearms. His feet were clothed in blue socks tied with red ropes and ended with yellow torii sandals. The hero's signature red scarf was wrapped around his neck and flowed down his back. The white patch on the front was lined by 4 golden buttons, one replaced by a mega stone. The hero's lower face was covered by a dark blue, golden-lined mask, and his right side was further concealed by his unique hairstyle, gray hair shaped into 3 straight, sharp points, one shooting down to cover the right side of his face, and the other 2 spiking backward. The left side of his hair was trimmed and combed back more regularly. From the corner of Momo's eye, she could spot Etshot's famed Greninja hanging upside down from the rafters, poised and elegant despite its position, a red sash draped diagonally across its chest, bearing its corresponding megastone. Momo briefly wondered if Izuku's Froki would reach a similar status. That is correct, Etshot-sensei, Momo admitted. The reasons for such an offer, while most generous, still puzzle me greatly. I see. Edshot hummed, sitting with perfect posture and patience. Momo could scarcely see a single muscle twitch or move involuntarily. Tell me then, what, if any, insights might you have come to understand the reasoning for my offer? Momo tensed briefly, a sudden surge of expectation sending her mind into overdrive. Well, I believe I have come up with a few possible solutions, though one of them I find might be terribly insulting to either of us, Momo muttered. Please then, do not be shy. Edshot gestured for her to continue, unafraid nor unnerved, before picking up a couple of shuriken. At first, Momo felt a pang of fear and uneasiness before the shinobi hero grabbed a whetstone to sharpen the shuriken, relieving Momo before she proceeded with her gathered analysis. Very well, if you insist, Momo nodded. The first possibility I can imagine must deal with my performance in the second event. Momo paused as Edshot started sharpening the shuriken, the sound and slight sparks causing her to flinch. Shaking it off, Momo continued. It was the most prominent and worthwhile show of my abilities in the festival. You took a measure of my quirks abilities and my implementation of them, and became Dash. Another sharp scrape of blade on whetstone made Momo flinch and pause for a second. Interested? Edshot nodded along, yet said nothing, switching to sharpen the other shuriken. Momo's hands shook, yet she steeled herself forward. Another possible theory is my status as a recommendation student, Momo continued, doing her best to tune out Edshot's actions. Present Mike made no secret of my admission through recommendations in my match against, so you researched the exam and witnessed my scores, which you found impressive enough to add on to your decision to send me an offer. Edshot remained silent, save for the consistent sharpening of the shuriken, something Momo imagined was excessive at this point, but brushed away. The third was my subpar battle against Tokoyami. Momo hesitated for a moment, shame of her meager performance still cutting deep into her pride. The sound of a whetstone over a blade blended with the sound of Dark Shadow's claws slashing against her created shields made it worse. You saw a measure of my potential and were left confused and disappointed. Disappointment turned to curiosity at the irregularity of my skills, and you decided to take measure of my talents personally. Edshot's left eyebrow raised. A shiver of self-doubt could not be contained. Momo momentarily worried she had assumed wrong, and that gesture was one of further disappointment. And the fourth most likely theory is the insulting one, Momo admitted, Edshot's sharpening of his weapon now thunderous in her ears. In your research of me, you discovered my status as the heir of the Yaoyorozu conglomerate. You saw the idea of personally training the heiress of a high society family as a potentially lucrative and beneficial option, one that could raise your ranking among the hero billboard chart. Momo's hands shook worse as she thought of the looming shadow of her parents over her, one that still did not vanish even after her engagement was broken. And my parents could have sent you a sum of wealth or the promise of their influence to Dash. Edshot raised his hand, palm out toward her, and Momo immediately shut her mouth. The silence felt more damning and unbearable now than the sound of sharpening shuriken. Tell me, Kriati, what do you find different about these shuriken? Edshot suddenly asked, gesturing at the table. Momo blinked her eyes in confusion before looking down at the table. The two shuriken lay out in front of her, each clearly different. The first was sharp, pristine, well-crafted, and honed to a perfect gleam. The other looked too thin, brittle, and worn down. This was the one that Edshot had sharpened for far longer. The right one is too weak, Momo answered. Yes, it is. Edshot nodded, picking the blade up, raising it to where it covered half of his face in her vision. Its blade is too worn down. My attempts to sharpen it had done so. I spent too long attempting to sharpen it, to make it perfect, that I wore it down to such a sad state. Imagine if I used it? Do you think it would be adequate in its purpose? Momo didn't get the chance to respond before Edshot acted, firing the shuriken at a target on the far side of the room. The blade sailed perfectly through the air, passing within inches of Greninja's face, toward the red center, but when it struck, it shattered into pieces. Momo couldn't help the yelp that escaped her throat. Greninja didn't flinch. The mind, body, and heart These aspects of our person are what keep us in balance, a perfect harmony that allows us the opportunity to achieve our goals and whims with precision and adequacy. Edshot spoke, his wise words capturing Momo's full attention whilst grabbing his other shuriken. Let one go out of balance, and the whole being becomes warped, altered, weakened. Sharpen a blade too much, and it will thin beyond its use. Let your mind become clouded, and you will not know when to cease the sharpening. Let your doubt cloud your mind, and you let yourself and your blade fall to ruin. Edshot raised the other shuriken. But if you keep the heart in check, keep your mind leveled, and your will focus dash, Edshot tossed the blade at the same target. The blade hit the target dead center and stuck. And your goals shall be obtainable. Momo stared, stunned at the act, her gaze transfixed on the shuriken, the light of the room shining off its blade, sticking perfectly on the scarlet-red center of the target. You are much like the blade, Edshot continued. In your theories, you lead yourself further to the correct answer. However, your mind was clouded, your doubt too ingrained, and you willed yourself past the right answer and into answers conjured from your worries and personal inadequacies. Let yourself spout theories that deprecate your self-worth and unwillingly question the integrity of others, regardless of your intent. I am so sorry, Momo meant to say. Edshot raised his hand for her to stop. There is no need to apologize. Merely understand the consequences of your words and your thoughts, whether on yourself or others, Edshot stated. Momo's eyes fell, her mind taken back to the sports festival, where she had willingly decided to follow Todoroki's orders rather than defy and join with Izuku. She remembered how she justified her actions, her pride calling to win the festival herself, to end the engagement herself, rather than act out of loyalty and ask for aid from those who cared for her. Momo unwillingly insulted Izuku's ability to win the sports festival, as well as the others, in favor of herself, all while unconsciously chipping away at her own self-worth, and it led straight to her defeat at Tokoyami's hands. This is why I chose to offer you this opportunity, Edshot continued. You possess your talent. Your mind is as deadly as a sharp blade, precise and dangerous, and in tandem with your quirks capabilities, you have the potential to be a great hero, but only if that blade is tempered and balanced. Humility can temper pride, self-deprecation, and doubt joined in your ruin. I understand, Momo gasped out, heart pounding, overwhelmed. No, you do not, Edshot stated bluntly. But I can teach you to, if you are willing to learn. Momo's hands clenched tightly. If there is anything true about me, it is that I'm always willing to learn, Momo declared to herself before declaring determinately to the pro-hero. I am. Teach me. The edge of Edshot's mask twitched upward, a glimpse of a grin, made evident by an approving gleam in his eyes. All across Japan, the first-year hero course students adjusted to their internships, learning from their various pros. Whoa! The chivalrous hero, fourth kind, flinched at the loud exclamation from his two new interns, yet retained his stoic expression. His ma-camp beside him, letting two of his hands cover the sides of his head while leaving his front two crossed. Tetsu/Kirishima? The two boys gazed at each other in surprise, both of them wearing their hero costumes. Quickly, their surprise faded into the excited friendliness they garnered during their sports festival match, clasping their hands together in greeting. Hey man, what are you doing here? The two said in unison. We were able to put in 2 offers this year, fourth kind answered. Let's begin right away. I look forward to working with you. Kirishima and Tetsu bowed and said the same thing again. Like a couple of Mr. Mimes, these two, fourth kind thought, yet kept to himself. Their similarities are part of the reason why he sent offers to both of them, from what he found impressive about them, as well as their similar weaknesses. Let's get this internship started. I was impressed by the guts both of you showed at the sports festival. I like you too, fourth kind began, sitting down. However, being a hero isn't easy, and you can't rely on brute force alone. Experience is the key to a competent hero, and you'll both learn from mine. That's the chivalrous hero for you. Tetsu exclaimed excitedly as he and Kirishima smiled. He's so manly, Kirishima exclaimed, too. Fourth Kind slammed one of his four-ringed hands on his table. Wait for me to finish speaking. Fourth Kind yelled. Yes, sir. Apologies. Kirishima and Tetsu bowed and apologized. Looks like proper manners are another thing I'll have to drill into those hard skulls of yours, Fourth Kind muttered. Thank you very much, sir. The two hardheads mimed each other again. First, let's talk about why we are here, Fourth Kind continued, two of his hands clasped together while the other two gestured to the two interns and himself. Pro-heroes receive wages from the government, so we are basically civil servants, but there is more to it than that. With the legal use of our Quirks and Pokemon, our responsibilities differ from those of other workers. They are even greater. Now, regarding our actual duties basic hero goal, control crime. The battle hero, Gunhead stated as he and Uraraka patrolled through the streets of a different prefecture. Brellum walked beside his pro-hero trainer, while Minnie floated by Uraraka. When there is a crime in progress, the police will contact us. These requests come in all at once and are filtered by district and the various nearby agencies or patrolling pros. Gun had looked back at his intern, gazing at him with complete attentiveness, if not with a bit of surprise in her eyes. Gunhead didn't make a special note on the last observation, focusing on and approving of the former. We file reports on the services we provide, assisting with arrests, rescuing people, etc. Gunhead explained further. Then a special agency looks at our work and decides how much we're paid. You'll catch on quick, kiddo. Uraraka nodded, slightly absent-mindedly, still taken aback by the pro she was interning under. I didn't expect him to be so friendly. Additionally, heroes are allowed to have side jobs. Another pro-hero, Uwabami, said to her two interns as she applied makeup. Her Lilligant and Serena stood off the side, the former patiently waiting on her trainer, while the latter occasionally checked on herself in the mirror as well. There were a lot of debates about this when pro-heroes were first established as a career, but after heroes ended up becoming so popular, the public practically demanded it, on the stipulation that they not interfere with each other, like any other jobs. Itsuka Kendo and Pony Tsunotori nodded, both of them perplexed by the situation they found themselves in. For example, I'm about to shoot a commercial, Uwabami said. Stick around, okay? Oh, sure. But, I was hoping for something a bit more action-y, Kendo muttered, a bead of awkward sweat rolling down her brow. Isn't there something else we can do? Like, go out on patrol, maybe? Hey, relax a bit, Prez. Pony patted Kendo's shoulder, a cheery disposition remaining on her face. I think it might be fun. Ms. Uwabami would know best, right? I suppose. Kendo chuckled, her mood rising with her American classmate's sunny disposition. Speaking of which, do you know why I chose the two of you? Any thoughts? Uwabami suddenly asked, turning to them and standing up. Kendo hummed, so startled by the sudden change in topic, she struggled to find an answer right away.
Ooh.
Could it be that you were amazed by our heroic potential? Pony offered. Well, that's obvious, but there is another reason, Uwabami said, her dainty finger on her chin. You're both very cute young ladies.
Huh.
Kendo and Pony voiced, confused. Originally, I wanted Yaoyorozu on board as well. The girl's an absolute bombshell, and her connections to the Yaoyorozu conglomerate wouldn't hurt to promote my brand better, Uwabami thought to herself as she mentally examined how best to dress the dolls in front of her up for the shoot. But Tsunotori works, too. In fact, being an American heteromorphic can do numbers domestically, internationally, and provide a positive boost to a minority group. Uwabami licked her lips, practically tasting the money. Heroes must practice and train constantly. Death Arms stated as he and Kyokujiro, aka Earphone Jack, jogged through the city. Beside them respectively, Death Arms's Conkeldurr ran while lugging his concrete pillars on his shoulders, while Kyoka's Loudred struggled to keep pace with his trainer. Training increases stamina, practice breeds perfection. The more of it, the better, even when you are out on patrol. Right, Jiro yelled, panting and sweating as she kept up with the pro. Dear Arceus, this is even harder than class. You know it's a useful skill. Picking a good patrol route, Mount Lady said, as she and Kaminari walked down a specific route she had chosen, handing a map full of highlighted routes for him to look through. Gorgiast and Blitzel walked alongside their trainers. Knowing a good route with even amounts of urban and rural means you can tackle a lot of objectives in one fell swoop. Mount Lady looked behind her, pleased that the kid was actually paying more attention to her map, and less on her ass like she originally feared. Oh, sure. She could tell he snuck more than a couple of drooling looks, and she wasn't going to be mad about that, but Yutakiyama was relieved that she and her lessons wouldn't be so easily disregarded by a hormonal teenage boy like she feared. The fact that she was being taken seriously and ogled in a balanced measure felt nice. Guess I made the right call not lying on the couch and forcing him to vacuum it, you thought, a slight rise of smugness going through her head, before a jolt of reality brought her back down. Though that means I'll have to do it myself. The sacrifices we make for trying to be better. You mentally sighed, the memory of Izuku Midoriya and his shining example, both during the sludge villain incident and now at the sports festival, once more encouraging her to be a better pro. Mount Lady began raising her fingers as she began listing the previously stated objectives. 1. Presence. Civilians look at us, and it eases them greatly, while also making any nearby crook or villain think twice before pulling anything, Mount Lady stated. 2. Availability. The closer we are to any given location, the faster we can get there if a crime is in place. 3. Familiarity. The more you patrol around the city, the easier it will be for you to memorize the place, take speedy decisions when catching or cornering a perp. As Mount Lady continued, Kaminari nodded along, half paying attention, the other half shocked by how different he and his friends were from what they had expected the gigantification hero. I don't know what Midoriya and Mariella were so worried about. She looks like she's serious about being a hero, Kaminari thought, nearly snorting out a chuckle as his gaze dropped momentarily to the pro's amazing ass. Beauty and brains. What more can a dude want? At the same time, Serena and Siu worked on push-ups alongside Sirius and the rest of the Oki Mariner crew while Sea Rescue Hero, Selkie whistled and switched between inspecting them and their Pokemon. While Milotic, Bryon, and several other water-based Pokemon trained by swimming through an obstacle course and jumping hoops, others joined in with push-ups, with Serena's Piplup and Siu's Psyduck struggling more than the rest. To be perfectly frank, I am somewhat disappointed in you. Tenya Ida shifted rigidly at the comment. Pardon? Ida asked, holding his helmet by his hip. I know full well why you accepted my offer. Ida's pro-hero in turn turned around to face him. Dressed entirely in blue jean-like clothes, from his skinny jeans to his jean-like jacket that reached up to cover the lower half of his face, ending in an extra belt over his mouth. Fiber hero. Best Jeanist stared critically at his intern. Or, more accurately, why you were forced to accept it. Tenya stiffened, a tiny wince escaping. It wasn't because I'm one of the top 4 heroes. You didn't even choose my agency originally, but rather this was sentenced onto you to protect and correct you, and I was more than willing to accept such a task, Best Jeanist stated. I am not sure I follow, sir. Tenya attempted to lie. Your position as one of the top 5 pro heroes and your amazing track record and work ethic were inspirational enough for me to dash. Tenya did not finish his statement before he was entrapped. Ida gazed at how his knees, elbows, and torso were all wrapped tightly from the fibers shooting out of Best Jeanist's suit, the sleeves of his arms and legs shortened as a result. You are a terrible liar, Best Jeanist stated, his gaze colder than before. Much like your brother. Tenya's eyes widened. Don't think I haven't heard about what happened to him at the same time as the festival. Hero killer stain. Ida froze, lowering his head slightly, knowing that the pro had him figured out. You informed me that you were hell-bent on accepting an offer from Hosa City for the express purpose of hunting down the man who butchered your brother, Best Jeanist continued. Your brother would be disgusted if he were here. Tenya's teeth formed a snarl. But he isn't here, is he? Tenya questioned defiantly. He is, just not in the capacity you wanted, Best Jeanist corrected. The act against your brother is a tragedy. That is true, but you dishonor his legacy with your intentions. I can see the anger in your eyes. Those are not the righteous fires of justice. They're an inferno of hatred, vengeance, the eyes of a killer. I am nothing like that monster, Ida yelled. That is for me to ensure, Best Jeanist replied, willing his fibers to lift Ida's helmet to his hand. A true hero disregards his personal desires for the safety and well-being of others and behaves himself accordingly as a proper citizen and role model. That is the major difference between heroes and villains. We are all cut from the same cloth, but the intentions and actions we make are what weave the canvas of our being. Best Jeanist raised the helmet before Ida, the blue-haired teen staring at the helmet's eyes. The helmet that Ida based heavily on his brother's, the one that was left cracked and marked by the bloodshed of a monster of a man. Now it stared at him with the pro-hero, both judging him. In the brief week you are here, you will watch me. I will educate you on how to become an exemplary pro, someone your brother would approve of, Best Jeanist stated. That includes being aware of how you behave, your appearance, control of your emotions, your morals. I will stick these things into the fabric of your being. Shoto Todoroki fell onto the floor with a grunt, wiping across his bruised cheek from the kick that sent him spiraling. His breath panted out in cool, visible puffs, visibly attempting to heat himself faster. He barely had time for another breath before a yellow comet came straight at him again. Shoto dodged, swiping his right arm in a high arc in hopes of catching his opponent on his way up, like he did the last few times. He could hear the blasts of air, his eyes darting to the top of where his glacier's spikes reached the roof of the warehouse, trying to catch where between the spikes he would come from. Instead, Shoto could hear the blasts of air suddenly behind him. The youngest of the Todoroki family widened his eyes, pivoting on his crouched feet, raising his flaming left arm to blast the incoming foe. Todoroki could barely catch what happened before the boot made contact with his face, but he could make out the small white and yellow figure spiraling around his torrent of flames. Shoto slid down the warehouse's metal floor, his head barely touching the glacier he had made previously. He groaned as he felt the weight of the old man's boot on his bruised chest. Quicker, that time, but you still react as slow as a lazy slaking, Shoto heard. The heterochromia-eyed teen strained to open his mismatched eyes at the man. This is certainly not what I was expecting. The white and red-haired teen groaned internally, recalling the events that led him to this point. After Aizawa-sensei revealed that he was going to be forced to accept an internship under a former UA teacher, Shoto was utterly confused. He did his best to find out all he could about the retired pro, but couldn't find anything of note. Shoto at first wondered if this was UA's attempt to waste his internship week as punishment. He did know that his father did not take the news well. Endeavor raged and destroyed most of his home gym's training equipment after informing he and his sister about the circumstances. His father only did that when things really angered him, usually when he lost another chance at becoming #1 to All Might, so Shoto knew his father was pissed that he wouldn't be able to train him like he wanted. The previous Shoto Todoroki would have been smug and taunted his father for that, but instead, Shoto simply said it as it was and left it at that, only replying that it wasn't a choice on his behalf and seen as a disciplinary act from the school that he couldn't refuse. Shoto silently prayed apologies to UA for the angry phone calls they inevitably received from the #2 hero. Admittedly, if it weren't for this punishment, Shoto would have actually taken Endeavor's offer. It wouldn't be to acquiesce to Endeavor's wishes and follow his father's example of a pro, something Shoto already told him back at the end of the sports festival, but simply to learn how to use his left side more effectively, years of disuse beyond heating himself up after a fight taking its toll and making him rather rusty. For as bad as he was as a father or heroic role model, Endeavor was still the best fire quirk user in the country. No one knew more about fire power than him. Additionally, Endeavor didn't get as high as #2 on the charts for firepower alone. He was truly effective as a pro hero, having done more arrests and stopped more crises than even All Might himself, especially within the last 5 years or so. It was this record that got Flame Hero, Endeavor as high as he was, with only his poor public relations compared to the popularity and charisma of All Might that kept the former perpetually stuck in second place. If Shoto could respect anything about his biological father, it was this, and he was willing to put aside his personal feelings over the old man to become a better fighter. Knowing what he did now about the man he was sent to intern under, Shoto knew he would be begging Arceus himself to train under Endeavor instead of the terrifying former pro whose boot pinned him down. Hours or so earlier, when he had arrived at Yamanashi Prefecture, Shoto had been given instructions to head to an abandoned warehouse and to outfit himself with his hero costume before he entered. Shoto felt the situation was a little sketchy, but did as instructed, changing into his new hero suit. When Shoto first saw the new suit, he almost wondered if Principal Nizu and Aizawa told the support course to redesign it in a way that they knew he would be pissed at, making it similar to his father's. The design was similar in concept to his father's hero suit. The primarily navy blue heat-resistant jacket and baggy pants were similar to Endeavor's jumpsuit, and that was as far as the comparisons went. Yet the obvious inspiration did earn an eye twitch and grumble about his teachers being rather petty. The rest of the design was adequate, though. A light gray tactical vest was added, mostly shown at the back and displayed on the front via the straps around his shoulders and sides, and from what Shoto saw of the design schematics, the vest was made to act as both a heater and radiator. The brown utility belt around his waist was armored with beige-colored pads and a buckle, with spots to strap his pokeballs onto, and 4 little, metal capsules hung, containing medical supplies he might need in case of injuries or emergencies. Something I might need right about now, Shoto unknowingly quipped to himself, presently. The new suit kept the white boots of his old design, and the spikes on the soles for walking down the icy floors he would create, a single stripe of gray running down the ankles to his feet. The sleeves of the suit reached up to just above his elbows, and the high collar popped open and was connected by a gray neckpiece. Shoto likewise read and spotted the device implemented into the suit that would act as a cooling or heating device, depending on which side and time he would use his quirk. An interesting addition that raised his eyebrows when he spotted them was the Ninetales-like design. An artistic depiction of the tails of both Ninetales forms in the middle of his chest, the cold blue, white-tipped Alolan tails on the right, and the warm golden, orange-tipped Cantonian ones on the left, the differently colored tails forming a flame that looked both cold and fiery that spread out from his chest. The insignia of both Ninetales had stared straight at him, cutting off to the others half down the middle where his zipper was, the red rubies and blue sapphires for eyes gleaming in the light. Shoto had felt mixed emotions when he saw it. It was technically incorrect, given that the Cantonian version was still a Vulpix at the moment, which made him feel shame once more at the reminder of his past actions, and yet he felt something warm bloom in his chest at the sight of what Vulpix could become and the kind of hero he was now striving to be. Not pure ice or pure fire, not the distant cold or the furious burn, but something in between, something his own. Putting on his new suit, Shoto entered the warehouse as instructed and found a sight that froze him as much as his own quirk. On the floor was a man in a white and yellow hero suit, plain and simple in its design, with a yellow cape and large yellow gloves and boots, and he was lying in a pool of red. After shaking off the momentary freeze, Shoto rushed to the man, thinking he was lying in a pool of his own blood, saying if the man was all right and shaking him for a response. When Shoto reached his fingers out to feel his pulse, the man suddenly snapped his head up, smiling innocently. "I'm alive," the man had said. Shoto had been stunned into frozen silence again as he witnessed the man get up on a wooden cane, mumbling like a tired old man about having spilled and slipped from his sausages. Shoto was still confused how the man's bright costume didn't get smudged at all from the pool of blood-looking sauces. When asked who he was, Shoto had done his best to respond calmly, yet that became progressively harder as the old man repeated the question, saying that he couldn't hear him. When Shoto asked if he was the former UA teacher he was sent to intern under, the man's confused look made Shoto think he was senile. The boy's patience was strained to its limit when the old man remarked how the medical capsules on his belt looked like his wieners. Shoto nearly upped and left after that, muttering that UA sent him here as a waste of his time. Shoto took only a few steps before the old man's tune changed 180. "I was told you had a bit of a temper like your old man's. You also have his impatience," the old man said. That was when the beatdown began. It wasn't as dramatic or life-shaking as his battle with Midoriya, but it was certainly brutal and one-sided. The former pro bounced and sped all over the place, Shoto barely able to catch the man's small figure before he would blast off in a different direction and angle and strike at him with punches and kicks that felt too strong to be coming from the old man who struggled to lift himself on his cane. Shoto did everything he could to try and catch the man with his quirk. He erected walls and spires of ice wherever he went to make him crash. The old man would just blast off into a different direction or jump off them easily. Any icy obstacle he made to protect himself from him, the former pro would somehow slip through and strike him so hard he would crash through the icy structures. Shoto even tried grabbing the man just as he was about to kick him, treating the fight like he would if he fought against Ida. If Ida could also fly like Bakugo, but the former UA teacher would slip from his grasp and earn him a kick to his side. After a few more failures, Shoto finally gave in and used it, his left side. Shoto broke through the instinct he had cultivated, using only his right side. Even after everything that happened with Midoriya at the sports festival and at the lake, years of habit were hard to break. However, the frustration and desire to fight back against this aggression broke through whatever hesitancy he had left. Still, even when using his fire half, the results were still much the same. No matter how well-timed or aimed his fire blast would be, the old pro would dodge and acquaint his body with another strike. Even setting half of himself on fire to dissuade an attack was left with failure, the old pro blasting a jet of pressurized air from his feet and blowing his flames off of him, blinding Shoto with his own flames and leaving him open for another kick to the back. If getting the shit beat out of me is what you expected I would get for coming here, they were right, Shoto groaned again, the man switching from planting his boot on his chest to sitting on him. You are getting used to using your left side, but breaking you out of that self-conditioning you put yourself through is going to take longer, Gran Torino stated, his voice now grumpier and more serious than the senile act he played. Your control and utilization of your ice is impressive, but your fire half is understandably lacking. I'll show you lacking, old man. Shoto grumbled, the cool mist emanating subtly from his right side spreading to the old man. Shoto willed the ice to form, spreading nearly instantaneously, yet the man simply vanished from his chest. Shoto was about to rise and swipe around himself with his flames, yet the man reappeared, landing with a hard boot to the top of Shoto's head. You're slow to switch in using your two halves while missing the point and you tire yourself out trying to change yourself the wrong way, Gran Torino claimed. Shoto paused at his words before mentally shaking them away. Determined, Shoto blasted a spire of ice and fire simultaneously toward where he knew the old man stood. The attack struck empty air while the boot to the back of the head sent Shoto sliding down the metal floor once again. Better. You nearly had it there, but you still aren't there yet, you little newbie, Gran Torino said, a smirk audible on his weathered face. That's enough of an introduction for now. Clear this place of your ice for now, and we'll head to my apartment to drop your stuff off. Shoto struggled to lift himself to his hands and knees. Was that it? All that time, to tell me the obvious that my use of my left side is lacking? Shoto questioned, glaring down the retreating backside of the old pro. To see how you are lacking in using it, Gran Torino responded, turning to match Shoto's glare with a cold, unintimidated one. You use your two halves like they are opposites, two powers to wield and switch toward, and when using your fire, you lean to fight exactly like your greatest example, your father. His example is but shackles on your potential. I'm not my father, Shoto declared, glaring colder at Gran Torino. Exactly, Gran Torino said with a smirk. Shoto paused, his glare replaced with wide, surprised eyes. Now, you have to decide what kind of hero you want to be. With that, Gran Torino continued walking out of the warehouse, leaving Shoto to contemplate the old man's words. Izuku panted as he ran through the bamboo forests, eyes darting everywhere to catch another glimpse of the blue-furred rascal that had been eluding him for hours. Izuku swore that he saw the child-sized creature enter Aoyama Ryokuchi Park before slipping away within its bamboo forests. At times, he could hear the call of the Pokemon in one direction and then suddenly hear it in another. Izuku almost thought he was hunting a ghost-type Pokemon rather than a Riolu. No luck down here, Izuku mentally relayed, gazing upward. Froakie, you spot anything up there? Negative, Froakie croaked at his mind. The the bubble frog Pokemon hopping from the tops of the bamboo forest while his trainer searched from the ground. If he's using the trees to move and hide, I haven't spotted him. What about you, Combuskin? Your fortune's better in your sector. No, Combuskin reported, jumping on the rooftops of Nagoya's buildings. No sign of Riolu. He must still be within the park areas. What about you, Pikachu? As I've said for the 1000th time, nope. Zilch. Nada. Pikachu groaned as he jumped from one neighborhood roof to another. Why did I have to stay behind in the neighborhood? We know he's not going to circle back to Mr. World's best Aura Guardian's home. No, we don't know that. Eevee disagreed, running through the pathways of another Nagoya park, trying to blend in as best as possible without disturbing the peaceful picnics and enjoyment of the park visitors. It's always a possibility he could double back and have us search for hours rather than the one place that's the most obvious. And you're the quickest one who can cover the most ground. Or roofs, so to speak. I got nothing here, too. Alright, fine, but then why is Shiny Shell tagging along with the boss and not taking his own part of the city? Pikachu asked further. Cease with that infernal sobriquet. Shelgon growled as he stopped beside Izuku. It was unamusing the first time, it has not changed the next dozen ones. You'll get used to it, Froakie advised. It's either that or rip your ears off, and I quite like my hearing. Still, what ears? And even if the newbie did have ones he could see and tear, I doubt he would with those stubby legs of his. Pikachu quipped back. Okay, enough, the three of you. Izuku commanded, his saintly patience with his Pokemon's antics thinner than ever with how exhausted and irritated he was. And, you know why Shelgon can't be off on his own, Pikachu. Capable as he is, I doubt a shiny Pokemon wandering all on his own through a city would go well. Additionally, 2 pairs of eyes would make catching a glimpse of our prey easier, Shelgon added. Yeah? And how well is that going again? Pikachu asked. Shelgon said nothing but growl, irritated. That's what I thought, Pikachu muttered smugly. I hate to agree with the rodent, but he might be right, Izuku, Combuskin replied, ignoring Pikachu's annoyed hey. This is getting us nowhere. Are you certain that you don't have some way to track him with the upgrades of your suit? Finding surprisingly good at hiding Pokemon isn't one of them, Combuskin, Izuku replied, glancing down again at his new and improved hero suit. After the damage it sustained during the USJ incident, and so soon after it was partially wrecked in his first battle training exercise with Bakugu, the support course students, mostly Mei from what Izuku heard, worked on making an upgraded version of his hero suit, one that he was now wearing. The suit retained much of the same design as his previous one. Same dark green base coloring, black lightning bolt-like stripes curving from his sides to his abdomen, yet the stripes now shot straight down, framing his abdomen, complimentary, rather than pointing straight at it, and his crotch in a braggart sort of way. Mei's words still left Izuku embarrassed. His red utility belt remained unchanged, as did his gray respirator mask that hung by his neck, and the Eevee-like hoodie by the back of his neck. The white armored pads on his shoulders remained, yet now sported a new black tracing and a new symbol on each, both of which looked rather similar to the symbol on Riley Aaron's gate. Izuku wondered if this was something Master Taisher had requested in preparation for this training. The most notable differences were in his arms and legs. The black armor of his legs now reached around his thighs, yet was still flexible enough for Izuku to maneuver with full cowling unimpeded. His signature red shoes were covered in armored black soles for greater striking power and durability, especially for his more powerful smashes. For small, green buttons were by each of the knee's sides, each one representing a different icon of his Pokemon, the outer right knee sporting icons of Pikachu's and Eevee's heads, while the outer left ones held the ones for Combuskin and Froakie. The only one of the inner buttons that held an icon was one of the inner right ones, bearing the dragon-like eyes and 3-fingered claw of his newest Pokemon, Shelgon. Izuku had made the buttons himself as visible markers of pride in his Pokemon, and though he knew he would have to change them frequently with new ones should they evolve, Izuku was unbothered, happy to make updated ones to show the progress and growth of his partners. He also had 2 more buttons on each of his shoes' armored soles, all blank for future potential Pokemon. Then there were the arms. The white gloves were now practically gauntlets that reached his elbows, sturdier to take more of his stronger punches, the dark blue stripes now curving around below the elbow, and one green button each in the middle. His gloves were apparently the ones most changed and worked on. They were larger and thicker, made to withstand his punches and provide more comfort and protection for his damaged fingers, especially his right hand. Small holes were formed on top of his knuckles, made for his newly developed Air Force technique. The most notable change was on the back of his hand and his palms. The palms of his hands were now colored green like most of his suit, yet they also possessed a blue, circular design, and the ones on the back of his hands even bulged slightly. The dark blue stripes below his elbows would also spread down his gloves in 3 directions, right, left, and center, till they reached and encircled the blue domes. They looked similar to Guardian's gloves, and Izuku wondered further if this was yet another addition courtesy of Taisher's request. Izuku didn't know the full purpose of these particular design changes, but had a feeling it related to his aura, perhaps as some conduit to focus his aura spheres through rather than through his gloves, remembering how his previous ones blew apart after he formed the aura sphere that broke Shigaraki's hand. Yet, for as mysterious as they were, Izuku had a feeling they, or any part of his suit, had a Pokemon tracker installed. Izuku and Shulgin strode through the bamboo forest, slower, cautious. As they walked, Shulgin sniffed the air. Do you sense that, Master? Shulgin asked. The shift in the air. The smell of something intense. Yeah. Izuku nodded, frowning as he could feel what Shulgin described flowing throughout his body. The air felt denser, charged, as if the energy in the area was more alive, present, active. I get the feeling our target led us here on purpose. But why? Shulgin asked. Izuku didn't have an answer. Finally, the two came upon a small, hidden clearing, both trainer and Pokemon pausing at the sight. The small, circular grove of bamboo held a patch of lively, green grass, flowers littered and gleaming with a brilliance that seemed almost crystalline. A sakura tree bloomed in the center, an anomaly hidden within this forest of bamboo, several of its branches hanging down and curving like streams. But the main centerpiece was in the middle, a large crystal, resting by the base of the tree like a gravestone or monument. It shimmered with glittering light that rolled off and floated through the air briefly. Whoa! Izuku gasped softly, his eyes entranced by the crystal, his senses overwhelmed by the aura he felt rolling off the crystal and into the air. Shulgin shuddered at the energy too, feeling equal parts invigorated and stunned in place. Izuku? What is it? Evie asked. All of a sudden, you started to feel strange. I'd some kind of large crystal in this small clearing, Izuku answered, almost unaware of how he inched closer toward the crystal like a venomoth to a flame. The energy coming off of it. It's aura. Tons of it. Wait, really? Pikachu asked too. Like some sort of aura wellspring or something? No, it's not just from the crystal, Izuku replied, kneeling before the crystal. It's more like a conduit. A conduit? Combuskin repeated, confused. The aura from the crystal, it's more than from it alone. It feels like the aura of everything else, Izuku revealed. The grass, the ground, the trees, even the people and Pokemon all over Nagoya, I can feel them through the crystal like it's channeling them through itself. Izuku raised his hand, slowly reaching toward the crystal. Like we're all connected. As Izuku's fingers touched the crystal, the pulse and glow of the crystal hummed brightly. Izuku's eyes were momentarily blinded by the ethereal light as his own glowed pure ocean blue. He was unaware that the circle on his palm, the blue stripes, or the slight dome on the back of the gauntlet's hands glowed brightly. Instantly, Izuku saw the world once more the same way he did when he searched for Riley Aaron, but it wasn't just himself and his area he was seeing. Izuku felt his sight expand and travel along the park, throughout all of the city, passing by buildings, houses, and other parks, all in the same blue and black filter. He felt connected to the whole city, the entire land, traveling along what appeared as veins, ley lines, like the land's very own nervous system. As he passed by, he saw thousands of people and Pokemon strolling, running, and existing, all glowing in various ways. The color of their glows differed. as well as the intensity. The closer he examined one person or Pokemon, the more he could feel what they were feeling: joy, sadness, anxiousness, anger, elation, calmness. Every single person or Pokemon felt unique in how they felt to Izuku. Izuku's senses perked, and, as if by his will, his sight traveled quickly past numerous obstacles until he found one specific figure standing on the top of a rooftop, the glow and shape of the Pokemon instantly recognizable to Izuku beyond any random bystander or Pokemon he passed. Combuskin? Izuku muttered. Izuku could see Combuskin's body stiffen and look around wildly. "Hi, Izuku." Combuskin cawed, her voice echoier than before. "Is that you?" "Yeah, it's me," Izuku confirmed, his voice likewise taking on a more reverberating tone. "Where are you?" Combuskin asked, still looking around, confused. "Still with the crystal," Izuku answered. "Are you sure?" Combuskin questioned. "Before I could hear your voice in my head like a signal I could pick up distantly, but now it's like you talking directly in my ear. I touched the crystal, and I think I somehow tapped into the aura of the entire city," Izuku explained. "It's like when I searched for Master Eren, but the scope magnified greatly. I picked up on your signature, the connection through our bond, and I found you. I can see you looking around on the rooftop." "Truly?" Froka's voice spoke in his mind, though still in the same distance and tone as his previous telepathic conversation with his Pokemon. "Can you switch to the rest of us, too?" Izuku did as Froka suggested, focusing on finding Froki through his familiar signature. Nearly instantly, Izuku's sight changed and veered away from Combuskin, zooming through the city again before landing on the shape of Froki resting on the top of a bamboo tree. "I see you, Froki," Izuku gasped, a chuckle escaping him. "On top of a bamboo tree several meters west of me. And I can hear you, as how Combuskin described." Froka muttered, his voice now clearer and more present like Combuskin before. "And you can hear him the same as before, Combuskin?"
Yeah.
"Weird," Combuskin muttered, the tone of voice conveying confusion and a shudder in the change.
Ooh.
"Do me next, boss," Pikachu exclaimed, excited and clearly interested. Izuku did as such, and again with Eevee. Izuku even switched to Shelgon and could see the dragon type standing right beside him, though almost with his own eyes rather than seeing from a third-person point of view. Each attempt and change earned another chuckle of elation and excitement from Izuku Midoriya. It was all so overwhelming, as if his mind was open and ascending beyond the lengths of any quirk or power imaginable. Having fun, pupil Midoriya?" A voice broke through the fog of Izuku's own excitement. Izuku's body jerked in place, so surprised that his hand almost left the crystal. Wait, is that you, Master Eren?" Izuku asked, recognizing his new mentor's voice. "What other dashing, handsome, super-talented Aura Guardians have you been talking to via an Aura Crystal?" Riley questioned, his voice echoing from an unknown direction. "Aura Crystal?" Izuku questioned. "You heard me. Aura Crystal," Riley repeated. "These are concentrated fragments of pure aura energy, usually sprouting from the earth, connecting and relaying the aura of all surrounding people, Pokemon, plants, etc. Helps us Aura Guardians expand our clear sight throughout large areas and beyond." "Clear sight? You mean my aura sense?" Izuku asked. "Yeah, clear sight feels a lot more original than aura sense," Riley replied. Izuku could practically hear the eye roll coming from the Aura Guardian. "That feels like it's approaching trademark territory." Izuku's ears burned in embarrassment. "But anyway, yeah. The technique you used to find me, how you've been sensing and viewing throughout the city, that's clear sight for you. The ability to view the world through the eyes of aura, see everything touched by it, part of it, and even sense the energies and emotions of those around you," Eren explained. "Though there are limits to the lengths one Aura Guardian can sense. But by tapping into these aura crystals, we, Aura Guardians, can see farther, our sight and senses passing through the Earth's ley lines. Think you're mentally surfing through the Earth's own internet. It also allows fellow Aura Guardians and our Pokemon to communicate secretly from far distances." "That's incredible," Izuku gasped. That must be how Master Taisher could sense that something was wrong with me, Toru, Tsu, and Todoroki, or how he knew that Vulpix wanted to stay with Todoroki. This is like multiple quirks wrapped in one. Clear sight could allow me to sense if a villain or criminal is getting hostile or enraged to the point of attacking, or if a civilian is feeling anxious or disturbed and in need of calming or aid. Its ability to gaze and examine an environment would be invaluable in mapping out villain or criminal hideouts or bases, uncovering the location of an important objective like a bomb or hostages. Mutter, 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 mutter. Dear Arceus, it's like Nijire had a half-brother no one knew about, Riley thought to himself, almost pondering if that was why his star pupil, really, his only pupil before Midoriya, was so interested in him, if the clear signs of attraction spilling out from her weren't obvious enough. But as humorous as listening to and interpreting Midoriya's babble was, he knew he had to reel the young pupil in. Anyways, Riley spoke aloud, snapping Izuku from his muttering spree. Yes, clear sight is cool, super useful, and I would let you enjoy mentally snooping around all of Nagoya for a little longer, but I had to reel you in before you delved too deeply. Delved too deeply? Izuku repeated, concerned. That can happen?
How?
You experienced it yourself. Using clear sight through the aura crystals can be overwhelming, addictive even, Riley warned. Past records detail how some novice chosen spend too long in the ley lines till they're one and the same, their souls getting consumed into Earth's own aura and leaving behind a husk of a corpse. Or, starve or dehydrate. Amazing as aura can be, it's not exactly good sustenance. Izuku's stomach dropped at the knowledge, wary of the very crystal he had been touching this whole time, and the thrill he felt when viewing throughout the city. And you? Are you communicating through one, too? Izuku asked. There is a special aura crystal in the house, yes, but nope, I'm using a more mobile version, Riley answered. Shorter range, but more accessible and handier, especially with no aura crystal around. So, the aura crystals are like telephone booths, while what you're using is like a telephone, Izuku said. You catch on quick, kid. Riley chuckled, impressed. But then why not use the aura crystal in your home? Izuku asked, curious. Wouldn't it be easier than using one whose range could be too far? Firstly, it can reach you from here. And secondly, it's because of how awesome I am, Riley bragged, not so humbly. If I weren't so used to Bakuga's far more arrogant form of bragging, I would have gotten sick of his already, Izuku thought to himself, hoping his innermost thoughts wouldn't be as easily caught as when he verbally slips them out. But enough singing my praises. I can see you're having a hard time finding your little assignment, Riley said. Gee, what makes you say that? Izuku replied sarcastically, still surprised by how confident he had been getting that he could speak like Pikachu. I assume Riolu purposefully led me here, so we can have this little lesson. Again, quick on the draw, kid, Riley snickered. What better way to teach a lesson than hands-on experience? When the hands-on approach includes accidentally absorbing my soul into the earth? Izuku offered. Debatable, Riley replied nonchalantly. But can you tell me how Riolu's been giving you guys the slip? He's using clear sight to sense our approach, Izuku answered with sudden, analytical clarity. Riolu and Lucario have always been able to sense their surroundings using aura. Clear sight is just our way of replicating them. Exactly, Riley said. So, that begs the question, how can you catch a foe who knows where you're coming from? Izuku pondered the question deeply, delving into his year's worth of hero worship and analysis for an answer. When it finally came, Izuku almost smacked his head for how obvious it was. Use it to your advantage, Izuku answered. Flank him, corner him. Lead him to a corner he can't back away from. Izuku poured his attention back onto the crystal. If Riolu can use clear sight to know where the others and I are coming from, I can use it, too. Figure out his trajectory, coordinate, and change his path into a trap. As Izuku went to work, Riley observed quietly and calmly, like a teacher letting his student figure the problem out themselves. Quick study, genius in analyzing friend and foe, prodigy in powers he's only known for a short time, Riley analyzed his new pupil, casually inspecting and noting the several different aura signatures buried deep within the boy's quirk. Taisher told him only so much, that Midoriya's actual quirk had origins and connections to aura, too, but skimmed out on the finer details, said it was confidential, and required further debate. Translation: You aren't allowed to know until I and whoever else knows about this. It was irritating to see the old man continuing with his old tricks and habits, but Riley knew Tangaka Taisher long enough that you either go along with his nonsense for as long as you can or… Riley frowned, shaking away the past before it could haunt him any further than it did when he first saw Izuku Midoriya and considered his answers. All so right and all so wrong. He really is like them, isn't he? Riley thought, quietly planning and bracing himself to do everything he could so that Izuku Midoriya could be everything Taisher said he could be, and steer him away from everything he grimly reminded them of. Riolu panted as he leapt from tree to tree, sharp turns to his sides giving him all the information he needed to evade his chasers. The emanation Pokemon was a tad apprehensive with this method of proving Izuku Midoriya's worth, especially given his personal history, but ultimately agreed with Riley Aaron's words. All fledgling pupils had to prove their right to their would-be masters in any way the master saw fit, and catching a runaway Riolu was one of the most common practices. However, most of those trials didn't have a Riolu as gifted as himself. Riolu shook his head, banishing the prideful thought before he got too full of himself like Master Aaron. The truth was that Riolu was different than most of his species. He had known that for most of his life. The scars on his arms and chest were evidence enough. The nightmares he had were only a cruel, humiliating addition. When he finally found peace with the Order, he had been sought after as a grand prize by several pupils, those who presumed themselves worthy of finally catching the special Riolu. The Pokemon saw their greed for what it was, no different than the poachers and hunters who saw his talents and wanted him, even if it required a few scars and trauma. Riolu rejected and evaded every pupil who sought him, to the point that the Order had no choice but to assign Riley Aaron to look after him till he got over his rebelliousness. Riolu scoffed at the notion, as if he would let his fated partner be any of those unworthy, self-centered pupils. As if the scars of his past could be so easily remedied if he gave himself up to someone who just didn't feel right to him. No, none of them were the one he was looking for, the chosen who would call to be his partner. That all changed after he watched the sports festival with Master Aaron. After he saw him, Izuku Midoriya was different from all the rest. Seeing the green-haired boy made Riolu feel different compared to every other chosen, someone interesting, worthy. The more he saw him fight, the more Riolu's aura rang approvingly. The way he treated his comrades, human and Pokemon, that shining radiance his aura emitted, the sheer power and magnitude he felt during Midoriya's fight with that indigo-haired human, it was intoxicating. It called to Riolu, and his aura sang in recognition. This was the one. That was what his aura told Riolu, but he needed to be sure. So, he agreed with the trial, agreed to steer Midoriya to the aura crystal as instructed, and was promised that the boy would do everything else. All Riolu had to do was what he was supposed to do. Let himself be chased, and let the chosen find him his own way. Riolu felt that was what was happening. He could sense it, the sudden shift in tactics, no longer searching for him wildly throughout the city, but purposefully, each Pokemon belonging to the boy approaching him directly, steering him, hurting him, and he couldn't go against them without direct confrontation that would waste time and make him a sitting ducklet. A part of him felt irritated for being played into someone's plan, but another part of Riolu felt impressed by Izuku's tenacity, cunning, and the drive to win. It was fun. Finally, Riolu hopped from the cypress tree and onto a roof, a familiar one, the Itsudajingu Shrine. Riolu blinked his eyes, surprised, wondering if the boy knew about the shrine's true importance or if it was a massive coincidence. Then again, Master Taisher likewise mentioned that coincidence is but another name for fate. The Pokemon was snapped from its thoughts at the sound of something else landing on the rooftop. Looking at the other end of the shrine's roof was Izuku Midoriya, his green and black hair blowing in the wind, staring at him blankly. Riolu blinked, looking around to see more figures around him. The Froke hung on the side of a nearby cypress tree, gazing down at them. Behind him, at the other end of the shrine's roof, Combusken stood, crouched and ready to pounce. By the lower sides of the roof, Pikachu and Eevee flanked him, and Riolu could sense Shelgon on the ground, waiting. Riolu was surrounded. The only way to get out of this is to fight, Riolu thought, bending his knees and clasping his hands together. The Pokémon tensed, preparing their own attacks. Before either side could act, Izuku raised his hand. His Pokémon froze, gazing at their trainer in surprise, a mental conversation evident. After a few seconds, the Pokémon eased, ceasing the energy of their moves. Riolu turned his attention back to Midoriya, confused and cautious. That caution turned to surprise as he saw the soft, sympathetic eyes of the green-haired boy. Those scars, the ones on your arms and chest. You've been hurt, haven't you? Izuku asked gently. Mistreated. Riolu paused, his mouth opening to say something, but he stopped. I know. It takes one to know one. Izuku removed one of his gloves slowly, showing Riolu his scarred, crooked fingers. We all have scars, ones that we can see, and others that fade away but never disappear. Izuku's eyes grew tired, as if letting out of the veil hiding years' worth of pain and bullying, all Riolu could see and feel, and left shuddering. I know it's scary. To open yourself up, let people in, to give them a chance, all while fearing they disappoint you. Take your kindness, your second chances, and break them. Izuku slowly began walking to Riolu, unable to sense a single hostile and devious intent in the boy's body. I was like that, too. I had someone that I saw as a friend, someone I looked up to, turn on me, make my life a living hell, and I thought for the longest time I couldn't trust another like that. But then I took a chance, a leap of faith. Riolu blinked, paws lowering as Izuku continued. I found someone who accepted me for who I was, every flaw, every quirk, and treated me warmly, as a friend. She's my best friend, and soon after, she began to help me move on, to grow, make new friends, and let old wounds fade away. Izuku stood before Riolu, the two staring into each other's eyes. The scars will always be there, whether we acknowledge them or not, whether we try to forget about them or not. Izuku knelt, his eyes leveling closer to Riolu's, honest and smiling. But they don't have to be what makes us. The past doesn't have to define us, just another part, another quirk of who we are. I don't know if I'm the person you are looking for. I'm not sure if I'm the right guy to bond with, grow strong with, become partners with, Izuku said honestly. But I'm willing to try and hope for the best. Like with my friends, sometimes all we can do to move on and make the future we want is to feel and take a leap of faith. Izuku raised his hand, open and willing toward Riolu. I'm willing to try. You. Riolu was silent, gazing deep within Izuku Midoriya's eyes, his senses open to all of the boy's pain, emotions, and honesty. Riolu listened deep within himself, to his aura, to his instincts, his gut feeling, and they all told him the same thing. Riolu raised his paw toward Izuku. Silently, Izuku's Pokémon tensed, about ready to jump and protect their trainer from an attack. Yet Izuku was still, no emotion on his face, just waiting, offering. Finally, after a few moments of silence, Riolu's paw lowered and landed gently on Izuku's outstretched hand. Instantly, the two felt the bond manifesting, linking the two's auras together in a way that transcended a pokeball. With a quiet ring, the bond was formed, solid and unbreakable. When it ended, the two opened their eyes, smiling at each other. Izuku's other hand rose, holding a great ball. Riolu quirked an eyebrow, tilting his head as if saying, "Really?" Izuku smirked, shrugging. Riolu snorted, switching paw to touch the great ball. As he made contact, the ball opened up and absorbed Riolu. Izuku felt the ball shake and rumble momentarily before the iconic sound of a successful capture sealed the deal. "Welcome to the team, Riolu," Izuku greeted officially. "Luca," Riolu's voice replied for the first time in his mind. "Call me Luca." Meanwhile, Tamura Shigaraki sat on his stool by the bar, waiting. The villain had gotten too annoyed with Tyrant today and forced him back into his ball. Yeah, he could still feel the bruises on his chest from the spoiled Pokemon's tail smacking his side over and over. It was a foolish decision to give the little brat any attention, and now such kindness left him irritated and annoyed before his guest of honor arrived. Shigaraki tapped his finger against the wood of the bar, still waiting. Master had already announced his presence when the TV on the wall turned on, saying he wanted to listen in and observe in the background. Master said he would leave the recruitment to him. Shigaraki bowed and accepted the circumstances, even though anger and shame ate at him from the inside. Paranoia, fueled by irritation, had Tamura believe his master didn't trust him to do this by himself. He had been noticeably stingier with him since the USJ, since he was sent running away with his tail between his legs by All Might, by that green-haired brat who broke his hand. The hand had since healed, yet he still wore bandages around it, his fingers still ached, and every throb pissed him off further. Shigaraki's fingers turned to scratching and clawing at the bar, the waiting becoming too irksome. When Kurojirai had returned days prior after meeting Stain, telling him that the hero killer agreed to a meeting but dared to demand it be in a few days, not immediately like he wanted, and Kurojirai agreed to it, Shigaraki threw another of his justified tantrums, called Kurojirai a useless fool with no spine. He almost followed his desire to grab the warp villain's neck and decay him to dust, but held himself off. Master would have been mad if he decayed his caretaker, and that only worsened Shigaraki's mood. The only members of the League left were himself, Kurojirai, Master, and the Doctor, and the latter two forbade Shigaraki from decaying any more spare Nomu to vent out his frustrations. And since the USJ, Master also forbade him from his nightly walks into the woods to decay any annoying and ugly Pokemon he found. Bidoofs were his favorite. And no matter how hard he pleaded, Master would not allow him to go after the brat. Shigaraki whined about the hypocrisy. His master told him he could destroy and kill anything and anyone that annoyed him, but the moment he found someone he hated the most, almost as much as he hated All Might, he was forbidden from ordering Kurojirai to find and warp the brat here to turn him into dust. These past weeks have been agonizing for Shigaraki, inside and out, but now things were going to be different because they were recruiting. No more passive mode, because they were about to have a new party member, a dangerous one who also killed those he didn't like. Heroes. And if that green-haired brat was one thing, it was a hero, and that made him pray for the hero killer. All Shigaraki had to do was charm the potential recruit's scarf off. Easy as cake. Finally, when Shigaraki's patience was about to end in another decaying tantrum, Kurojirai's portal opened up. The warp villain himself stepped out first, making his way to the other side of the bar to Shigaraki. Shigaraki barely glanced at his henchman before turning to the portal as the man himself stepped out, the clatter of blades and spikes announcing his entrance. So I was right, hero killer Stain grunted, glaring his bloodshot eyes toward Shigaraki. You are the ones who attacked Yue. Shigaraki grinned behind his father's hand. Time to add a new party member.